Oh yes, 3 sections, I'm afraid.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Um, in terms of who Robin is, she's one of our tutors at our colleges, and she's also an AI expert. She essentially helps individuals as well as organizations in terms of their marketing, as well as implementing this technology and becoming more efficient and up to date with it. So every 2 weeks we have one of these sessions. Sometimes we also have random ones that you can kind of keep your eye out for in terms of any updates in for legislation or a new technology that kind of comes around the bat a bit too quick. So we're always trying to stay one step ahead. You're more than welcome to engage with us on LinkedIn, as well as our AI newsletter that we have. And there is a Slack channel as well that we use to communicate. So always great to have you guys engaging there. Robin, you happy to take over from here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as Daniela said, today is all about AI or not. So I will have 3 sections that will require you to actually tell me if it is AI or not, right? So as much as you can, like, talk to me, interact with this session, because then I can make sure that all of your questions are answered before the end and you can get the most out of this hour together. We create these sessions and they are an enclosed theme, right? It's just 1 hour. It's not like we have a course where we can pick back up this idea in a couple of weeks. So any questions that you have, Danielle is very good at making sure I don't miss them. So just pop them in the chat. So welcome to our normal scheduled kind of session today. And we're going to be talking about how we make generative content work for our brands, our organizations, within marketing itself. One of the issues that we have with generative content is the fact that this technology, we could grab it really, really quickly without truly kind of understanding how to use it, how it creates the output, and actually how we tailor that output to be truly useful for brands, organizations, products, or services to sell those kind of things, right? So what we're going to look through today is we're kind of going to go through the different types of generative content, the ones that are mostly used by brands. We're going to look at some examples. You're going to tell me if it is AI or not. We're going to start with text and then go into images. We're again going to look at video too. And within each of those sections, I've also kind of put together the kind of best ways that you can use this technology. And then towards the end, we will have a checklist that you can go through to kind of make sure that your AI generative creation is useful, and also how you kind of create a boundary for creative teams when using AI. So, as we all know, generative AI is everywhere right now. And what started as this kind of niche tool, this kind of niche experiment, has exploded into something mainstream. And we now interact with generative content not only within our workflows, the platforms that we access within our work role, but as consumers too. But we're getting better at noticing, right? We know when something is slightly off, when something is generated by AI. And what do you think that does for a brand? How do we as consumers feel about a brand that we recognize are using AI? We kind of we lose a little bit of trust depending on the organization. And what we're actually seeing is this pull back from generative AI use when it comes to the final product that gets put out into the kind of world at the moment. And that is because we're not using this technology in the way that it is actually meant to be used. And as we go through this and I explain the technology behind generative AI, you will recognize how maybe it actually isn't the solution we all thought it was. So if anyone's had any experience with using generative AI within their kind of role, just let me know how much you use it already, because realistically, there is such a change in how this technology is being used. Not only is the technology getting better, we as users and consumers of this platform, we're we're kind of going on a roller coaster along with it. We love it one minute, we don't the next. And that is because the technology kind of outsped regulance, compliance, and understanding. So now we're trying to kind of catch up when it comes to this technology. So when we kind of look at AI generative or generated content, we're looking at the outputs of these systems. So when I'm talking about what is AI generated content, there's some kind of outputs and kind of things you can reference to know that it is AI generated. And this is good when you're kind of sense checking your own creative content, or as a consumer, looking at content created by other brands. There is a difference in generative content compared to general AI technology. There's different technology that supports this type of creation when it comes to AI. But the first thing I want to talk to you is that it is machine created. Yeah, it's machine created, not human written. And what I mean by that is that AI generated content is produced by these algorithms that are trained on vast amounts of data instead of a person writing or designing from scratch. The system predicts patterns, words, images, and sounds to then generate the new material. So when some of the platforms state that it is a brand new thing that comes out of these platforms, it actually, there's a caveat to that. These systems create based on the knowledge that they have, and they decide what that next option is, your output, based on all of its statistical learning. It doesn't generate in the way that we do. Now, in essence, do you think you can claim that you have created something with AI if it has come out of an AI system? Do you think that it is yours, or is it actually the AI platforms when we look at creation in this kind of way? Do you think that it's yours, or is it actually the platforms? Yes, Lily. In essence, it is the platform's creation. So that's why we're seeing a lot of problems with IP when it comes to generative content too. So that's the first thing. It is machine created, not human created. Even though we give it the prompts and we give it access to certain data, it is still classed as machine created. Yeah. It also has various different formats. So it's not just text, but that's the one that we're all very used to. Yeah, ChatGPT, and all of a sudden we could ask it to create LinkedIn posts and blogs and all those kind of things. And AI can create blogs. It can create product descriptions, but it also does images, videos, voiceovers, music, and even code. Yeah. It can, if it can be represented in data, AI can attempt to generate it. And that is when we can ask it to generate something, if it can be represented in data. So when you think about a video, that is actually dealt with in frames. Yeah, so it turns it back into a picture. And not only that, it is then dealt with in pixels. So every square has a numerical value. And that is how it actually creates that video for you. It's not just like it doesn't just go for an MP4 straight away. It has to revert it back to data, statistical understanding. So there's various different types of generative content. The original thought idea when it comes to generative, it, like I say, it does have a caveat because it is pattern based. It is not original thought. And you've probably started to notice this, right? How many of you seen LinkedIn posts that kind of look the same at the moment? How many rocket emojis? Yes, Daniela, how many rocket emojis have you encountered in your like LinkedIn wilderness today? Or words that say delve, intensity, did you know that? They know these kind of over-exaggerated sentences, and that's because it is pattern-based. So when we're asking it to generate, it is giving us the statistical best next thing or creation of our prompt, right? Because AI doesn't think, it doesn't have creativity in the human sense. We need to stop giving it these human qualities, because what it does is it recombines learned patterns and probabilities from its training data, which can look original, but that's because we haven't seen everything that it has learned. Yeah, but it is fundamentally based on existing information. The next thing you can kind of quantify or kind of qualify AI generated content by is the fact that it is fast and scalable. So one of the biggest advantages of this technology is speed. What might take a human hours or days can be generated in seconds, created from a prompt. And that makes it useful for scaling marketing content, drafting ideas, or producing multiple variations over time. Now, this is a very interesting identifier for AI generated content, and it is actually often detectable. Yeah. So even when polished, AI generated content can leave tells. So slightly off wording, repetitive phrasing, generic imagery, or even factual wrongs, factual slip ups, right? These quirks are why human editing and review are still important. If you have ever been to one of my sessions before, I will always say that AI at the moment, in its current form, the way that we access it, the way the technology exists at the moment, it is a really smug parrot. Yeah, it learns from the data we give it and the questions we ask it, and then gives us the best probable answer. It regurgitates the information that it has access to in the form that we ask it to create in. And that is why it will never replace, in its current form of technology, I will never say never, because like in 20 years, when somebody looks back at this kind of recording, they'll be like, huh, that was wrong of her to say, right? But in the current form, it will never replace experience or expertise because it doesn't have those nuances. So even though it can generate, it has these kind of issues. So I really want to delve into the technology behind generative AI now. I'm going to walk you through how, from when we give generative AI platforms a prompt, how it creates. Because then again, you will start to really understand how that generated thing is built. So you can get better outcomes because you know how it works. So this is the technical breakdown. So if at any point within this kind of 6-step that I'll go through that you want me to clarify further, just let me know, and then I will get that kind of answered for you. So generative AI systems, for example, like ChatGPT, they're powered by large language models. You'll see LLMs within the kind of description of this kind of tech. And these models generate text by predicting the next token, the next thing. And a token is kind of roughly a word or part of a word, yeah, based on a sequence of previous tokens using probability distributions learned during training. So the first thing that happens is we have this breaking down of the input. So we ask it something, yeah. So like my nan loves to be like, what is the weather going to be when I go to Rhyl on my little bus tour in 2 weeks' time? What it does is it doesn't actually read it like that. It tokenizes what we ask. So it breaks down that input. So when we write that prompt, the model doesn't process it as raw text. It tokenizes the input, breaking it into smaller units. So for example, write a summary, it would read as write a summary. And then those tokens are mapped to numbers using a vocabulary model that the model was trained on. So you have to give it time to allow it to process things in its own language. Yeah, we're putting it back into the data that it reads. So once it understands what we're asking it and has a clue what we kind of want it to do, it then converts those tokens to what are called vectors. So each token is converted into a vector, which is a list of numbers via something that's called an embedding layer. That's just the way that that translates. And this numeric representation captures some of the prompt from the tokens, meaning that similar words have similar vector representations, so they just get removed and it only takes the core things. So if you're not creating a gorgeous prompt that has the keywords it's looking for, you will always get rubbish out of these generative platforms. So the next thing that happens is we get something that's like a contextual understanding. So it's taken all of this data, it's gathered what it needs, and then it pulls it back to create that generated output. So in the sentence, the dog chased the cat because it was hungry, what then happens is the model tries to figure out our context. So then within that, it needs to figure out what it is. So it then is like, oh, it's most likely the dog. Yeah. So then it is transforming and processing all of those tokens in the language it now understands, allowing it to wait and understand context to then create the appropriate output. So as you can see, it's not very simple. Even though this happens in seconds, it's not a simple process. So then the language model is tasked with building the output. So once the model has built an internal representation, the one it can read, not the one that we can read, it starts generating the output one word, one part of the word, so a token at a time. And at each step, as it builds that generated output, the model predicts the most likely next token, yeah, by computing a probability distribution over the entire vocabulary. So if we asked it, for example, the French Revolution began in, the model then predicts the next token. So realistically, we could have a few outputs for that. We could have 1789, we could have Paris, we can have we can have France. But each of those outputs have a bigger or lower probability. So in that kind of instance, it would predict that you want it to create that 1789 is the next kind of word in that sentence. And it samples or selects the highest probability token depending on the strategy and adds it to the sequence. And then it just repeats that. Yeah, repeats that until we get our output. So you can see why realistically a lot of generated content can sound the same because its probability is all going to be similar. So if we're asking for a viral LinkedIn post, like it's going to sound the same as somebody who has asked a very basic prompt again. And then it has this decoding strategy, and it allows the kind of system to decide how it will showcase the kind of process, and there are different kind of strategies within that. And then, of course, as with anything, it has to have fine-tuning and alignment. So that is either when the model is training and learning how to do this better, or we do it whenever we get an output. So there are limitations in how it creates. And even though these answers sound intelligent, it is important to remember it has no understanding of facts or concepts, only pattern prediction. It doesn't know truth. It knows what usually comes next, and it can hallucinate. It can generate fluent but false or made up content. Yeah. So has anyone got any questions on the technicality side? So basically it takes our prompt, it refines it into a language it understands. By understanding the context, by weighing the words in our prompt, it then starts to statistically decide what is the highest next outcome. And that is the generated piece of content that we get. Yeah. So we're going to start to play AI or not. Yeah, so if you in the chat can tell me if it's AI or not when I say, it's not the next slide, it's the one after, just so you're ready for that. And we're going to start with text because it is guessed there's a beautiful study by Gartner at the moment that it is guessed that over 85% of content on LinkedIn by the end of next year could be AI generated if we follow the technological trend. But we are noticing a pullback and a need for human connection. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. So we know as humans, generally, when content was written by AI, because we have these internal responses to words, images, videos, and things that we see. So some of the kind of tells that you will already know, this won't be me teaching you anything new, are things like it is weirdly perfect. Have you seen those kind of generated content? Every paragraph has exactly 3 sentences. The pacing is smooth, but kind of too smooth. And it reads like a robot, yeah? And it's missing that natural cadence, that lyrical kind of momentum we have in general speech. The structure is painfully predictable. The big one at the moment is intro, 3 points, call to action, problem, solution, takeaway. Yeah, like it's very like bang, bang, bang. In every paragraph, you will see that kind of information. And we can guess it. We know what's coming next because there's no spontaneity or kind of conviction in the content. Humans don't write in structure in general when we're partaking knowledge, right? So it's quite interesting that AI does. And that is because it's probability when it becomes generated. Generally, if the prompts aren't great, we have this vagueness and this emptiness when it comes to the content. So we'll see things like work smarter, not harder, or turn challenges into opportunities. And it's because there's a lot of older style content that it has learned from, if you think about the data that has come before. And there's no purpose. It's just generic because it was a generic prompt. And then the stability statistically of the kind of output, it's gonna not be great. Like it's gonna be rubbish because it statistically it is just kind of predicting what you need based on what you asked it. And then I don't know if this is one of your bugbears, but it's certainly one of mine. First and foremost, furthermore, last but not least, the transitions are really obvious. So it's writing like a checklist because it's going through its statistics to create, right? And there's often this kind of emphasis on engagement that wouldn't naturally be there. So when the content isn't interesting on its own, it tries too hard to initiate a conversation. It's also very dynamic. So the emotion is dialed up to 10. So we get absolutely thrilled, so incredibly honored, yeah. And it's over the top language because realistically, if the prompt isn't giving it the kind of level, it will statistically go, well, this person must be 100% happy about this. So let's create that. So on the next 2 slides, I have, is it AI or not? Yeah. And I think the first one, super obvious, but the second one, potentially not. And I just want you to let me know if you think it's AI or not. Lily thinks it's AI.
AI, I'd say. Samantha.
AI. Yeah.
Penelope,
Yeah,
Rashanda as well.
Of course this is AI, but I want to talk to you why as humans we recognize that this is AI. And the first thing is the uncanny valley effect. So this is borrowed from like robotics and animation. And this is when something is almost human, but not quite. And we recognize this. It creates an uneasy feeling, a feeling of, it's almost classed as like anxiety because we know something's wrong, but we can't necessarily place it sometimes. And AI text often feels close to natural writing, but those tiny inconsistencies that I just spoke about, the lack of originality or too perfectness, create unease. Yeah. Readers sense it subconsciously. So that's the first reason we have this uncanny valley effect. So when we're using AI as organizations, we need to work really hard to not trigger that response in our kind of audience. We also have something called schema violation. So we expect as humans communication to follow similar patterns. So we know when something is a story, we know when something is an argument, we know when it is a joke. Yeah, we can predict that pattern from a few things, but generally it is in the structure, the words used, and the delivery, right? And AI often violates those because it doesn't have context. Yeah, it doesn't understand nuance. So it then starts to shift into over explaining or shifting tone abruptly. And those subtle mismatches again trigger something. This is not right. There's something off about this. And that causes a big issue for organizations using generative text. We also have pragmatic failure. So this comes from linguistics. And even if something is beautifully grammatically correct, a sentence can still fail in the pragmatics, the real world use of language. So for example, a polite condolence written in stiff corporate phrasing feels inappropriate, even if the grammar is totally flawless. We would spot this. Yeah. So if a social media brand is all about home kind of feeling, like low candlelight vibes, if they're using intensely corporate phrasing to create something because they haven't prompted correctly, or the system has assumed that that is what they want the content to be, it will feel immediately off. Because even though that is grammatically and structurally correct, it doesn't align with the overall context of that kind of real world language, that use of that language. And we also have this issue of indexicality. So this means where the language used points to the speaker's identity. So their background, their quirks, their personality. Like if you look at the way I write on LinkedIn, I am very blunt, I am very clear, I highlight things, I like to make fun of things. If you look at somebody else's, it will be totally different. And that would allow you as a consumer to know if I had written it or somebody else had written it. And AI doesn't have that. It doesn't have all of our experiences. So we end up voiceless or generic, which makes the AI side of things very detectable, right? And then there's something called the redundancy principle too. So humans naturally use unpredictability in language. So I will throw in a idiom, or I will break the rules as I talk to you, or I will have a surprising word choice, like from where I come from. We, instead of saying, hiya, are you okay? We're like, hey up, duck, are you all right? Because I come from Stoke. Now, that isn't natural for everybody, but that's like a quirk of my language and the way that I communicate. And without that, there's a lack of depth in what we create and how we connect. So readers will sense this. And we start to have this level of artificiality over the top of things. And AI often falls into the uncanny valley of language. So grammatically correct, but pragmatically odd, generic, or too predictable. And our brains are wired to catch that. So when you read that, you were like, oh, AI. You immediately were like, ugh. Like it creates this almost visceral response when it comes to actually consuming content. So it's becoming a bit of an issue. So what about these two? These were taken from LinkedIn. Do you think they're AI? Do you think they're both 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 AI? Do you think they're Left AI. So just as a follow-up question very quickly, while everyone else lets me know, Lily, why do you think left and not right? Anyone else got an idea? Yeah, both AI? Yeah? I know Daniela's having to think, she got close.
I'm not lying. I would probably say they're both written by people, but I'm sure I'm incorrect.
Both written by people, mix of both. Daniela, you're absolutely correct. These are 2 posts from the Reddit thread LinkedIn Lunatics, and they were written by people. So are we actually getting too quick to judge? Yeah. So what has actually happened is, alongside this kind of uncanny valley effect that we're seeing with actual AI stuff, we've now got this primed awareness, yeah, of AI content. So AI is in the headlines daily. So people are on high alert. And once we're primed, we start looking for these tells everywhere. I mean, I'm sure these guys have like purchased some templates from LinkedIn Guru like a couple of years ago, but we're starting to see things that aren't there, smoke and mirrors, right? And we also have this thing where confirmation bias comes in. So if a text feels bland or overly polished, we are just starting to blanket assume AI wrote this, even though plenty of humans write in cliche, they write in corporate or formulatic kind of ways. They can also write rubbish content too, yeah? And content with no meaning, and content with poor structure. And we have this kind of false positive thing as well, is because I asked you, are these written by AI, you're automatically trying to find that, right? So studies of AI detectors show that they often mislabel human writing as AI generated because our instincts can mirror different biases. Because I said to you, which one is written by AI? The answer was none, but you're looking for one, right? And this over intensity is starting to happen because we're losing this, there's a loss of trust, I would say, online. So readers feel that the internet is now flooded with synthetic content. We see all of these kind of media highlights, people are talking about it. I can't go anywhere on my LinkedIn without somebody going AI versus human, or kind of why you need a copywriter still. And it's quite intense. And because of this, we have our suspicion as kind of our default stance, where it wasn't like that before this became incredibly accessible. We could spot the kind of templated stuff, but still we thought that was still human. We didn't start to have this uncanny valley effect in the content that we consumed. We also have a fear of inauthenticity. So we value originality and kind of people's voice, their unique voice. AI is threatening that. So we're overreacting and we're trying to protect the idea of real human creativity. Whereas actually we've been supported by Grammarly and all these kind of systems to improve our writing for years. Yeah. And there's also this really interesting phenomenon if you kind of want to read more into it, and it's the AI hunt effect. So it's almost become a game for us to spot AI within our feeds. And then there's also like a blame with that. So the act of judging becomes part of how people are now engaging with content. So that's quite terrifying, really, that as consumers, we're going onto LinkedIn and we're subconsciously trying to find this kind of AI written content to judge it, to almost give it a label before even consuming, because there's some phenomenal AI generated content. It's just that we're kind of painting everything with the same brush, and that's not particularly fair. So remember that not everything's stiff or generic as AI. Humans can write boring, repetitive, vague content too. But what we need to be looking at is the quality versus the origin. So what usually matters most is whether the writing informs, engage, or connects, not strictly whether a human or AI drafted it. Yeah. And healthy skepticism, not paranoia. Critical reading is good, but don't be over intense when it comes to kind of this. So you may be going, Robin, so how do I actually use it? I'm like, okay, I can help. So I want you to use generative text platforms as an idea starter. So within your organization, within your marketing, within your own use, when you can use AI to overcome blank page kind of syndrome, generating first drafts, outlines, is incredibly effective because then you can iterate on top of that. Scale with consistency. So we know that AI can help produce product descriptions, FAQs, or localization at scale. We know that, ensuring tone and style stay uniform. So start small, and then as you get good at it, then you can bring that back in. And do things like customer support and personalization. So drafting responses or tailoring communications while still being reviewed by a human is incredibly important. So you must ensure accuracy and truthfulness when using generated text, because we know that AI sometimes hallucinates or makes errors, and we should have human oversight and brand voice. AI text should be edited and aligned with the brand's unique style, tone, and values. We do have a session that went through how to create a tone of voice for AI and how you can kind of keep that consistent. And then also transparency and trust. So AI text is most powerful when it's used for efficiency and inspiration, but the brand's judgment, creativity, authenticity must stay in the control of the individual or the brand, for example. So that is text, yeah? A big chunk of the generative AI that we kind of interact with. So now we're going on to images. So how can we tell if an AI has generated an image? So what I want you to start doing is, because this is what is causing a lot of problems online with deep fakes and misinterpretation of products, is I want you to start looking for the small mistakes. So AI struggles with details that humans find obvious. So common giveaways include hands and fingers, too many twisted, oddly shaped, teeth are blurred or they're too perfect or misaligned. Text in images are jumbled letters or are gibberish. And backgrounds often contain warped objects, inconsistent shadows, or objects blending into each other. Check for unreal perfection. AI often produces images that are too flawless, that beautiful kind of baby smooth skin, perfectly smooth skin without a pore, symmetry that feels unnatural, lighting that looks cinematic but does not match the environment. Look for inconsistent details. So AI sometimes misses the internal logic because it's weighing up that context. So you could have earrings that don't match, glasses with no reflections, clothing patterns that don't line up, shadows or reflections that don't match the tools, kind of the subject. And the next thing you can also check is sometimes in the metadata, image files contain metadata showing that they were created with AI tools. And I want you to do the feel test. Yeah, humans are great at spotting when something feels off, that uncanny valley situation. So the images that it can create are technically impressive, but slightly strange in ways that trigger our internal instincts when we look at this content. So AI images are like text, they have their own tells, but they are getting more and more difficult, which is why we need to look at the tinier details, because we don't understand image creation as well as we do text and language. An artist may see it quicker, or a photographer may see it quicker than somebody who's not creative in that way. So this is the way that we still spot that overall. And some AI images make us feel naturally off. And the reason is something called cognitive dissonance. So this is a mental discomfort when reality doesn't match our expectations. This image of the dog particularly does that for me. I don't know if it's the same for anyone else here. And overly perfect humans also does the same. We expect a photo to show a real scene, a dog playing, even though it's a cartoon, it's still off, right? The way the paws and are not quite right. And sometimes AI violates these rules, and then that mismatch creates unease or skepticism. When something looks too perfect, we have the hyperrealism effect, and then we have perpetual mismatch. And this is a neuroscience term for when visual input, this image of the dog, doesn't align with my stored patterns in memory. We also then have authenticity bias, and this is a social psychology idea where humans are drawn to cues of realness, which is why I'm like, ugh. When their cues are missing, we feel that the image is sterile, emotionally flat, and that can lower trust. So are you ready to do AI or not for me again? Do you think this is AI or not?
No.
No?
No.
See if anyone else responds. But Daniela, you're correct. This is an image of an enthusiastic crowd at a festival in San Francisco in 2015. So even though it does have kind of abnormalities, we are still able to kind of know that this is a real picture. What about this one? Is this AI or not?
It'd be a cat. It looks like a very PR related picture, but it does look a bit, yeah, it does look a bit AI, doesn't it? Rodica, AI, Samantha says AI.
So it is AI. It took you a little longer, right? Because we're looking for those little things. So what I want you to notice that two awkwardly placed pink tipped fingers poking from behind the arm in the foreground. Where's her hand? They definitely shouldn't be there. And also the woman in the center, look at her hand.
Okay.
And then look at her hand here. She's holding hands with somebody else. Yeah,
Does
so you
anyone
didn't
else,
know.
sorry, does anyone else notice anything off with the eyes, or is that just
Oh,
me?
yeah.
That's what gives it away for me. So with the
Yeah,
eyes.
because there's no depth, there's no reality. Like the eyes are often seen as this, like the window to the soul, right? And we're lacking that. But I bet you didn't notice these straight away, but you knew something wasn't right because your mind was going, something off here. Yeah. So are these AI? If so, which one is AI, or are they both real? And sadly, because of the session, I've kind of put you into hyper kind of AI hunt mode, and you're like, oh, so try and go with your gut. Yeah, try and just let me know what like the vibes were when you kind of noticed those.
I'm going to go top left AI and then the one next to it on the paper plate, not AI. Because I don't see AI putting something on a paper plate.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
That's
really
me.
interesting. Do you know why you think that?
I feel like it's a very human, like if you're marketing, I feel like, because it's that thing that you mentioned about the perfection
Yes, yeah,
aspect of everything being smooth and perfect. And I think that, I don't know, a paper plate, it's unless someone inputted it. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. You're absolutely right, and everybody else is absolutely right. The one on the left was actually used for a very well-known coffee brand as their picture for their avocado on toast. And it caused a huge PR disaster because it never looked like that when it came out of the actual thing. The one on the right is what it actually looked like. So how do we use AI generated images effectively? What do we need to know? And the way that you use this tech at the moment in the best kind of ways is creative exploration. So use AI images to prototype, test, and kind of look at things before committing to a larger budget. Also look at using it for scalable visuals. So generate product mock-ups, social graphics, helping your brand to keep up with content demands, and also accessibility. So you could tailor visuals for different markets. But again, you need to remain true to your authenticity and your alignment. So images should feel true to the brand's identity. If they look overly artificial, generic, or uncanny, why are we eroding that trust? Yeah. We need to look at accuracy and ethics. AI images must not misrepresent reality, especially for products, people, or services. An interesting one there, the really well-known trainer brand, they put out some concept shoes and people started to try and buy them immediately and try and sign up to every waiting list. And then a lot of actual kind of fraud things came out where people were paying to get on the list for these concept shoes, and they were never real in the first place. So AI images should enhance creativity and efficiency, not replace authenticity. Now, video is coming along. It is getting better in the way that it kind of creates. Oh, the video didn't work there. Just go. Oh, no, it's deciding not to play. But I will put the link for that in the end when we kind of sign off. And this was a video created by VO3, which is Google's new kind of AI video tool. And it blew the internet away because people couldn't tell that it was actually AI generated. So it's really interesting. You should definitely watch that. I'll put the link in a second. And what we're actually seeing now is that the issue is, at a glance, kind of this kind of content it's easy to kind of misrepresent, lie, not give the full kind of feeling when it comes to actually what is happening. And the way that we use video at the moment effectively is slightly different, because this version of generative AI is not as good as text and image at the moment. It is getting better. But the way you can still use this is by rapid prototyping and storytelling. So we can create quick storyboards, explainer animations, concept ads. We can do localization, so we can adapt a campaign for different markets. So we can change voices, subtitles, or even visual elements without reshooting, which is incredibly powerful to access different markets. And also do accessibility and inclusivity. So AI can generate sign language overlays, auto subtitles, those kind of things. But again, stay true to your clarity and accuracy. A video must not mislead for your product or services. Yeah. And also make sure with anything generative, especially video, there is human oversight and brand fit. And think about how much weight a video has, right? Video is persuasive. And AI deepfakes raise concerns. So make sure that we're working within that kind of ethics and transparency, good kind of layer. So when we're kind of looking at this, I want you to make sure you go through this AI review checklist. So if every box is ticked in this kind of review, the content is much more likely to feel actually credible. So first, authenticity. Avoid bland corporate phrases, long motivational rants with no substance, or content that feels like it could have been written by everyone, because AI outputs can sometimes feel polished but soulless. And our audience wants to hear a real voice that carries perspective, not just neatly arranged sentences. We're far more complicated than that. Yeah. Accuracy. So AI is fast, but it is not always factual. And trust from our consumers is fickle in the world that we live in at the moment. And trust hinges on getting the details right. So make sure you have verified facts, current data, and statements that align with your brand. Feed it to the system to make sure that it uses the right kind of accuracy within the output. Always make sure the system understands that your brand has a personality and AI won't always nail it. And then have a look at kind of making this AI brand tone of voice. And without human editing, content can sound generic or inconsistent. So make sure you're using language within your generated content that matches your brand identity. So are you warm, conversational? Are you bold? Are you edgy? Are you precise? Are you professional? And keep an ear out for phrasing that feels recognizably yours. Yeah. Don't have that tone mismatch because AI doesn't understand the context or the nuance of your brand. Attention is really scarce on the internet. I don't know if anyone's struggling with LinkedIn like everybody else is, but content actually needs to draw people in and keep them there. AI tends to write in a safe, predictable, statistically kind of okay way, and it doesn't always spark interest. So avoid long blocks of text, vague openings like AI is changing everything, or conclusions that trail off without direction. If it doesn't inform, inspire, or invite interaction, it will not land. Yeah. And then trust and transparency. And we are in the era of skepticism. Yeah. And honesty builds trust. If you use AI in your processes, make sure the end product still feels accountable and respectful. So I want you to go through that every time you generate something within your kind of content. And now AI tools do add value, and they add value in these areas: speed and efficiency, idea generation, creativity boost, scaling, consistency. But human oversight is essential because we need to be doing the fact checking, the emotional nuance, and the responsibility. So AI is a brilliant assistant, but it's not the decision maker. Yeah. The human role is to shape, refine, and take responsibility so outputs stay accurate, ethical, and on brand. And there's a kind of really easy way for you to set team guidelines for AI. And the way that you do that is you position AI as a tool, not a replacement for creativity. So clarify where it should be used. We need to keep us in the loop. So require human review and editing for all AI outputs before they go public. And encourage like your team members to inject personal voice, brand tone, and storytelling flair. We need to prioritize authenticity and transparency. So make it a rule of thumb. If the output doesn't feel human and real, don't put it out. Yeah. And set guardrails for ethics and accuracy. Always fact check. No claims, stats, or names go unverified. And build that bias kind of checks into your process. Could this unintentionally offend, exclude, or misrepresent? And also encourage play. This technology is wonderful, but protect the brand overall. So allow experimentation with AI for ideation and creative stretching, but pair that with clear brand rules, tone of voice, do's and don'ts, and style guidelines. So that is the end of today's wonderful session. And just before Daniela takes over, I'd like you to know that we have a Slack channel called the Oxby AI Exchange, and I post various things in there. And there's quite a few peers kind of battling our way through this technology together, and it's free to join. So that is the way that you join there.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin. It was a great session. I very much enjoyed the participation. Some of it really did throw me off though, but I feel like it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're going to have to develop an eye for this stuff.
Yeah, we really
as time
are.
passes.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know if the technology is going to get better at it, right? So we need to kind of stay ahead with the technology changes, the nuances, and what we need to notice. But my thing is, if it feels off, it's off. Like,
Okay.
because we have all of these internal systems that tell us when something isn't quite right.
Definitely. It's yeah. I'm not gonna lie, it's exciting but terrifying. That'd be terrifying. But anyways, I've popped bits in the chat. So if anyone is interested in upskilling with us, here at the colleges, we offer a multitude of courses that touch on AI as a technology. We have the AI practitioner qualification that encompasses all of the tools and is relevant to a particular industry. So you have one in marketing, one in business analysis, education, banking, and there's a multitude of other different topics. You're more than welcome to drop us an email at the inquiries team, and I pick that up and have a chat with you guys. Yep, like I mentioned, there is the AI in marketing, which is led by Robin herself, correct? Yeah. Yep. Or the if you are interested in a bit more of an entryway qualification, there is the Martech Club as well on the level 4. And you can complete these separate modules, gain awards, and essentially have something to exhibit on your CV as well as linked into your employers, or even just for yourself to demonstrate that you've learned the content in relation to the qualification. Perfect. Thank you so much, Robin, for popping in those links. I'm just reading the chat. Sorry, Christy. I can pop in the YouTube channel as well. Oh no, that's already been popped in. Perfect. Thank you. But yes, do feel free to engage with us as well on LinkedIn. Do post your badge. It's nice to kind of see who's attending and joining us. Do share the link to your colleagues, friends. We're interested in growing the community. Do feel free to use this as a free resource as well, and catch up on the content, or yeah. And looking forward to engaging in the next one. Do you know what the next topic is about, Robin?
Oh, let me just double check because
Thank you, Radhika.
so I think the next one is actually the black box. So yeah, so the next one is how AI really creates answers in all of its forms. So trying to kind of understand this black box theory, because actually we do understand the technology. We can explain how things are created and how it makes decisions. And we'll also talk about why some organizations may not tell you how the AI in their platforms does the thing. And that's actually because it's automation. It's not true AI. So yeah, so it'd be really interesting to see kind of
Sounds really
the
good.
response of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely be interested in that one as well. But yeah, do feel free to join us on the next one. It'll be in 2 weeks. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today.
Have a really wonderful week.